Here's Brody Brazil.
So far through the baseball postseason, it feels like there's been two main and major stories. One of them is that a lot of the best regular season teams really struggled out of the gate in their first playoff series. The other story also involves Atlanta, by the way, now eliminated from the postseason, and their shortstop Orlando Arcia, what he said inside the clubhouse after Game 2 that really fired up the Phillies and most specifically Bryce Harper. I want to make this video to first off summarize the situation in case you weren't aware of all the back and forth, but also to offer my own insights and experience into locker room etiquette, which is very much coming into question right now. What's on the record versus off the record versus off limits. Where is the player space? Where is the media space? What's gone wrong with these interactions? And quite honestly, you may think you know where I'm going to go with this, but I think I might surprise you in some of the perspectives that I'll eventually deliver. Attaboy Harper. That was the comment that was apparently made after Game 2. Bryce Harper was infamously doubled off at first base on that fly ball. That was the final out of the game. That's how Atlanta won Game 2. From CBS Sports after the game, Atlanta shortstop Orlando Arcia was reportedly and repeatedly mocking Philadelphia Phillies first baseman Bryce Harper in the clubhouse saying, quote, "Ha-ha, attaboy Harper." Like, not the worst thing to say in the world. There's plenty worse taunting that happens on a field of play, but for whatever reason, and maybe for a lot of reasons, Bryce Harper and the Phillies clearly took exception to those comments, which did get out. They were in the media, they were published, and oh yeah, it got back to Bryce Harper, and that's Game 3, where he hit two dingers, and both times delivered that cold stare as he rounded second base. That is one of the most telling sports photographs of the last couple years. Look at that pose, that body language. What's Arcia going to do but just stand there and watch? Bryce Harper definitely delivering a lot of a message without saying actually anything as he rounded second base twice. So it fired Bryce up. It fired the Phillies up. They obviously went on to win the series. After Game 3, when Harper homered twice, this is another article here. Meanwhile, through a translator, Arcia told reporters Wednesday night that he didn't think much of the comments when he made them. And, quote, "When you're in the clubhouse, I was under the impression you could say whatever you wanted." He also added, "Harper wasn't supposed to hear. That's why we were talking in the clubhouse." End quote. And also, again, through translation, to be very specific about Orlando Arcia's comments. Right? So now you've got the back and forth, you've got the heat, you've got the tension, you've got the baseball world watching this series, watching this story. Kevin Gausman, pitcher, says this on social media: "It's ridiculous us players have to watch what we say in our clubhouse." And then a little bit later, "Some of y'all, man, all I'm saying is that you should not be allowed to quote a player or say you heard something like this in a clubhouse when you, the reporter, are not talking to that player." All right, that's a perspective. That's part of the reaction to this. And then it goes even a step further. Alana Rizzo appears on High Heat on MLB Network with Mad Dog Russo on his show and says this, quote, "And I'm so irritated with all of these people, these bloggers or podcasters or not even reporters, not even journalists going into the clubhouse. You're ruining it for the rest of us. The guys that come in the postseason don't have any clue the pulse of the team, and it's making it worse for the people that are there every single day covering this team on a daily basis." She continues, "And then some jack-off comes in at the end of the season that gets a credential, God only knows why, and the clubhouse is a sacred space. And remember, I've been in clubhouses for the last 16, 17 years. I remember I would go in there, get my job done, and get out. That is their space. So for this idiot to go in there and take something out of context just to make him give him a name for himself is ridiculous." Now, let me just say, before we get into the full breakdown of reactions, I fully subscribe to it is their space. You do want to get in, get out. I do not like a lot of loitering in professional sports locker rooms, clubhouses, dressing rooms. I want to feel respect, like I am visiting somebody else's place. I totally agree with that. And I would also say I do understand the frustration of somebody that covers a team thoroughly, like I have been doing specifically with the A's and the Sharks for the last, 15 plus years. And a lot of times when those teams make the playoffs, all of a sudden there's a media scrum that is 20 times big as it ever was during the regular season. And of course, I'm still trying to access interviews with people I know, people I need, but they're bombarded with all the others who just flew in, who just parachuted in. And yeah, it does get a bit frustrating, but that's part of making the postseason. And hopefully your relationships, like my relationships with these players, these athletes, helps me secure things. So I say, oh man, this person's so busy. And I walk up and I say, hey, after you do this group interview, could I get a few words with you? Can I get what I need? And usually it's no problem. They understand, hey, I recognize you. I know you're around, but I understand Alana's takes here in two senses. Not in all of the senses, but in two senses. Number one, yeah, there's a lot more people coming around when it's the postseason. And also, you don't want to spend a ton of extra time inside a locker room or a clubhouse situation. So the other stuff, the whole reference to bloggers and podcasters and that other word up there, I don't want to say too many times, that seems like a bit of a stretch to me. Okay, so the Baseball Writers Association of America, they represent all of the, it's not like a union, it's just an association, but they represent all of the most tenured actual writers and journalists that cover baseball. They've been doing so for more than 100 years. This was their statement from this morning. On October 12th, Jake Mintz, who, by the way, was one of the few individuals that came out and reported what Arcia said, the attaboy Harper comment, Jake Mintz of Fox Sports was subjected to a personal attack during a segment on Major League Baseball Network. For the record, Jake is a BBWAA member in good standing and has earned the right to be credentialed through his hard work and quality baseball coverage. To assert otherwise in vulgar terms is both unprofessional and unacceptable. And let me just throw this part in there. I agree. And I'm also a old school professional sports network broadcaster. Like, that's how I make a living. But I guess I'm a podcaster. I'm a YouTuber. So like, to think that you're better than or above a certain selection, yeah, I agree that there are some people out there with sinister interests, and maybe they don't work for a company and they've got less to lose, so they are trying to make a name for themselves on a smaller platform. But I don't know that that's Jake's ambition here. I don't know that I'm lumping him into that category. And I also don't think it's good practice to put yourself above everybody else and say that what you do is so much more professional or not. I've seen straight up people who call themselves journalists definitely not act like it in their coverage or in their interactions, but I digress. Okay. The BBWAA is deeply troubled that the league's own network would permit the disparaging of one of our members in this fashion. Scrutinizing our work is part of the territory, but comments such as these should have no place on MLBN, Major League Baseball Network. And you know what? I would have to agree. I think those comments and that delivery and that approach, maybe that's your mindset, but I'm not sure that belongs on a platform, especially one representing Major League Baseball. Okay. The takeaways. I'm trying to summarize everything here all in one place. Number one is this. Like I said, I am a locker room minimalist. I don't want to spend a ton of time in there. I don't want to loiter. And sometimes I do need to secure interview with player X, whoever. And that involves waiting around, and they're not done with their training yet, or they're still in the batting cage, or they've got a meeting. So I'm going to try and, optimally, I'll communicate with the player. When's good for you? 3:15? Okay, I'll meet you back here at 3:15. I'm not going to circle the clubhouse and peek around. There are people that do that. And that's not for me. I would also say, and I really should make a video on this, there has to be a better way in 2023 in professional sports where media doesn't need to be in the clubhouse, in the locker room, in a dressing room. It's a mixed zone right now. And that's kind of my next point here. Clubhouses, locker rooms, they're open at certain points. Like, the doors are literally not wide open to anybody, but to, media members with a credential. You've got to earn your credential. You've got to prove that. But it's advertised to everybody. The room is open, and then the room is shut. And it's very obvious when the room is open and when media are there versus when it's shut. You know how I know? Because I've been in there when it's shut. I've been I've had behind-the-scenes access to clubhouses, locker rooms, team planes, team buses, team hotels. I'm not bragging about this, hanging out with athletes during off hours of a road trip. So I'm going to agree that a clubhouse at times, a locker room at times when the doors are shut, that is totally off limits. And if you are permitted to be behind the scenes with a team during their totally private hours, yeah, you better be in the circle of trust. And I'm not saying terrible things happen and oh my gosh, we need to be reporting every single scratch of the nose. That's not it. I'm just saying they understand that they are off the clock. They are off the public spotlight for just a bit when those doors close. That's it. But it's weird right now that we do this song and dance where the media comes in and there's people changing and there's nudity. That's part of the job. But how many other businesses and industries are like, hey, you want to interview some of our top workers? Yeah, they're going to be changing, but go in the room here. Well, it's just so weird. It doesn't need to be like this in 2023. How about a mixed interview room or not even a mixed room, but a completely open to the media room, and you request players come in for interviews? They're subjected to do that. They give you the proper time, and then they leave. And the media doesn't go inside the locker room, and only the players that need to come out that are requested and agree do the interviews. Simple as that. I know some people in the media would object to that. They like this access. They like to kind of peek around and get the vibe of a team. And I guess I understand that too, but it's just a fine line. Clubhouses, locker rooms, like I said, they're usually private spaces with the exception of when it's open to the media. And that's part of it. This is part of the job. And going back to Orlando Arcia, dude, you've been around this for a while. You know this stuff. You know how this operates. This is not your first rodeo. And I also heard a comment, and I'm not sure if he said it or if this was mentioned in, speculation. Some things are supposed to be off the record. Maybe somebody else said that. Off the record means I'm going to tell you something. I'm specifically telling you on purpose, but I don't really want it to be out there, and I certainly don't want it to be attributed to me. In this case, Orlando said something when everybody was watching. There's cameras, there's reporters, there's extra people. You just have to remember where you're at, what you're doing, and what he said, provoking Bryce Harper. There are much worse things to say in the world. He's talking about sports and competition and kind of the trash talk back and forth. And you know what? He is right. He did do it in a clubhouse. He didn't do it on the field. But he also did it, in an open clubhouse situation. You had to know somebody with all the extra media, all the extra attention in a playoff series, and people from Philadelphia in your room, somebody was not going to let that go. It is a player's space, like I said, but when people are going to hear things and people are, you know what? Some people, yes, I'm not going to lie, and I don't like this part either. Some people in media roles are out there to get the heaviest hitting tweets and to get the heaviest hitting articles that you'll click on, and they want to be the ones to put it out there. I'll make a quick reference to, famously, Joe Thornton made a comment in a Vancouver dressing room that went viral about scoring 4 goals. You can look it up. But it was something I can't believe the Vancouver media even decided to repeat based on how vulgar descriptive Joe Thornton's comments were. But somebody decided, you know what? It's fine for me, and maybe I'll get some extra pub from this, and I'm not going to let this go under the rug, so I'm going to put it out there. There are some in the media business that are going to do this. Now, that's up to them, and you know what? If they cross the line too hard, sure, they're going to hear from it, or they're going to hear about it, and they're going to hear from somebody involved. But that's up to them to make those decisions, and that's up to them to be held to responsibility of, person. Like, you should not have repeated that. In this case, it's hard. It's not something that was in a private situation. It's not something that was a true crossing the line comment. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of taking something that shouldn't be out there. And I'm not saying this should or shouldn't be out there. It's kind of middle of the road. But there are some things that should not be repeated, or they happened in a moment that was not for public consumption. Whatever happened, it could be a player revealing an injury that they had been keeping secret, and all of a sudden, somebody in the media saw, it's a hockey player's ankle or groin. That was not public information, but now it's your chance to either run with it or not. And you'll get the credit, you'll get all the the attributions. You'll get all the publicity for busting this out. But again, I'm just not a fan of that. So anyway, probably rambled a bit in this one. There is such a thing as locker room etiquette. I think overall, like, we should overhaul how media interactions are done and this whole locker room stall scrum thing. Like, it could be better than this. And I know Alana Rizzo wanted to talk about her 17 years of experience, and I'm in a similar situation. I've been doing this even a couple years longer. Hundreds, if not thousands of times. I've lined up, put the mic in there, asked some questions, and I don't do it as much anymore, but totally understand the dynamics of this. And this is an interesting one. It brings up a healthy debate, but I also think it points out some examples here of how we can just do a lot better. So thanks for hanging with this video. Appreciate it. Don't forget, thumbs up down below. That'll help me and this channel out. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so I can definitely see you back here next time.